If you're listening tonight, get comfortable and stay here a while. And if this story keeps you company, subscribe.
The left rear tire on the van has been losing pressure since Tuesday. Not fast, not dramatic, just slow enough that I keep telling myself I'll deal with it at the next stop. That's 4 psi over 3 days. I've been tracking it on a strip of masking tape I stuck to the dash with a marker line every morning. 3 lines now. The 4th spot is still blank. I'll fill it in when I check at dawn. It's day 181. We're parked on the shoulder of a state highway somewhere between what used to be called Hanksville and what used to be called Nowhere. The RV is facing west. The van is backed up tight against the rear bumper, cargo doors facing out toward the open scrubland. Nora's asleep in the back section. Joel has the middle bunk. Kara's on watch in the passenger seat of the van with the radio scanner running low. I'm in the driver's seat of the RV writing this by the light of a single headlamp turned down to its lowest red setting. I always write at this hour. Not because it's safe. Because it's quiet enough to think straight. Staying mobile was the right call. I believed that when we made it on day 14. I believe it now. But on day 174, I found the marks on the overpass. And after that, believing something stopped being enough. I should go back. Tell it from the beginning. Not for anyone else. Just to keep the sequence straight in my own head. Because the sequence is everything. Miss one link in the chain, and you can't understand why we made any of the decisions we made. And right now, with what I think is coming, I need to understand every single one of them. We were 11 days out when it started. Not from home. We'd left home on a Thursday morning in late spring. All 4 of us packed into the RV with the van hitched behind on a tow dolly. The trip was Nora's idea. She'd been talking about it for 3 years. Coast to coast. No deadlines. No work calls. Just the 4 of us, and whatever was on the other side of the next state line. I'm a former freight logistics coordinator. Spent 14 years routing long-haul deliveries across 12 western states. I know roads. I know which interstates flood in spring. I know which mountain passes close with 2 hours of notice. I know the kind of details that don't show up on GPS maps. Truck stops with good diesel, rest areas with working water, way stations that double as emergency pull-offs. That knowledge turned out to be the only reason any of us are still here. Nora was a high school biology teacher for 9 years before she took a break to finish her master's degree in environmental science. She knows how living things work. She knows how they fail. She understood what the infected were doing to human bodies before most people had accepted the infected existed at all. Joel was 16 when we left. He's 17 now. He doesn't talk much, but he watches everything. He's the one who noticed the tire pressure drop. He's the one who spotted the first convoy truck on day 38 in time for us to pull off before they saw us. He has a quality that I can't fully name, a stillness that most teenagers don't have. He never looks at his phone anymore. It's been dead since day 22. He doesn't seem to miss it. Kara was 13. She's 14 now. She argues about everything, and she's usually right. She runs the radio scanner. She's mapped every working frequency we've picked up in the last 6 months, and keeps a coded log in a spiral notebook she found at a truck stop outside of Flagstaff. She has a system for everything. She learned that from Nora. We also have Rex. He was already 4 years old when this started. A German Shepherd mix we got from a rescue 3 years ago. He sleeps behind the driver's seat during travel and moves to the rear cargo section of the van at night. He doesn't bark unless something is wrong. When he does bark, we move. We've never questioned him once. Day 11. We were parked at a campground outside of a small town in eastern Utah. Nothing alarming yet. A few news alerts on our phones about civil disturbances in 3 major cities. Road closures near an interstate junction 2 states east. The campground host had shut her office window at noon and hadn't come back out. The other 3 campsites in our row were empty by sundown. We noticed. We didn't act yet. Nora sat with me that evening and pulled up every news source she could find on our phones while we still had signal. She didn't say she was scared. She said, "I think we need to start treating this like it's worse than they're saying." I asked her why. She said, "Because they always say it's less than it is until they can't anymore." We spent that night reorganizing. I unhitched the tow dolly and drove the van separately for the first time. That changed our mobility completely. 2 vehicles. 2 drivers. 2 separate fuel sources. If one went down, we had the other. If we needed to split, we could. I'd been thinking about it since day 8, but hadn't acted. Nora's instinct forced my hand. That decision alone has saved our lives at least 4 times since. We loaded the van with the secondary gear. The camping equipment, the folding solar panels, the generator, extra fuel canisters, the tool kit, the water filtration system, the bulk food stores sealed in airtight containers. The RV carried the living quarters. Beds, kitchen, medical supplies, personal gear, the radio scanner, navigation maps. We had 7 paper road atlases. I'd bought them as a joke gift for myself when Nora announced the trip. Nobody uses paper maps anymore, she'd said. Correct, I told her. That's exactly why I have 7 of them. On day 12 we broke from the planned route for the first time. Turned north instead of east. Stayed off interstates entirely. Took 2-lane state roads through ranch land and mesa country, where the population per square mile is measured in fractions. The roads were quiet. The towns we passed through looked normal from a distance. We didn't stop to verify. On day 14, we saw the first one. We were rolling through a 2-lane stretch outside a small crossroads town. No traffic in either direction for the past 40 miles. Then a figure in the road ahead. Walking. Slow. Head down. Wrong gait. Not the stumble of someone drunk, not the drag of someone injured. Something else. Something that looked like movement without intent. I slowed to a stop about 200 yards back. Used the binoculars from the glove box. Dark fluid on the front of its shirt. Jaw hanging at the wrong angle. Eyes open and tracking nothing. One shoe missing. The other foot dragging a long strip of torn skin. I put the van in reverse, and we went back 3 miles to a dirt track turnoff I'd clocked when we passed it. Pulled both vehicles off the road behind a screen of juniper brush, and waited 3 hours before continuing. Used a different route. Added 45 minutes to our drive. That was our first rule. Never approach anything that moves until you understand what it is. The rules came fast after that. By day 20 we had 11 rules written on an index card taped to the sun visor of the RV. No interstate travel. No population centers above 2,000. No stopping at visible fuel stations without a 30-minute observation window first. No nighttime driving. No radio transmissions from our end, receive only. No external lights after parking. 2-vehicle convoy at all times with half a mile of separation. No contact with other survivors without a minimum 48-hour observation period. Always park with the exit direction already chosen. Always know the next 3 waypoints before stopping. And the last one, which Kara wrote herself in her handwriting at the bottom of the card, Rex decides. Rex decides meant exactly what it sounds like. If Rex indicated distress at a location, we didn't stay. No debate. No vote. We moved. He indicated on day 23 outside a rest area in Nevada that looked clear on all visible approaches. We pulled out and drove another 30 miles. The next morning, Kara picked up a radio fragment. 2 voices. Describing the rest area. A group had been using it as an ambush point for 11 days. We never questioned the card after that. Fuel was the first real problem. By day 25 we were running below half tank on both vehicles, and the station strategy took hours each time. Most visible stations had already been stripped or were clearly compromised. I had to start working from memory, recalling the quiet secondary stations I'd cataloged during my logistics years. Small-town co-ops, farm supply depots with diesel pumps, truck maintenance yards on the edges of agricultural land, places that wouldn't have been obvious targets in the first week. We carried 6 portable fuel canisters in the van, 20 gallons total. That was our buffer. We treated it like blood. Didn't touch it unless the tank dropped below a quarter, and we had no station option within a known 50-mile range. We refueled the canisters whenever we found a safe opportunity, not when we needed them. Nora developed a resupply hierarchy. Fuel first. Water second. Medical third. Food fourth. She wrote it on the same index card below the rules, in red marker, so we couldn't mistake the priority order. It seems obvious in retrospect. But in the early days, people were making food runs before they secured water. They were spending hours at pharmacies before they had fuel to leave. We watched that happen from a distance twice. Both times, the people involved didn't get back to their vehicles. Joel started handling the binocular reconnaissance. He has a natural patience for it that I don't. He could sit behind the windshield for 90 minutes without moving, watching a fuel station or a road intersection, cataloging every entry point, every shadow movement, every piece of contextual information. He kept a tally system in pencil on the window frame, small marks that meant different things. A single horizontal mark for a detected infected. A vertical mark for vehicle movement. An X for human survivor presence, confirmed. A circle for something he couldn't classify. He logged a circle on day 31 outside a depot in rural Idaho. I still don't know what he saw. He said he wasn't sure. We didn't stop. By day 40 the country had changed completely. Not destroyed. Not burned. Just vacated. Like someone had slowly drained it of all the noise it used to make. Towns we passed through had their commercial strips intact. Signs still lit on battery backup. Parking lots still full of cars left at crooked angles. Some drive-through windows still propped open. But no movement. No lights on in windows at night. No smoke from chimneys. The absence of smoke bothered me more than anything else. People light fires. People cook. People signal. The absence of smoke over a town meant one of two things. Either no one was there, or the people there were working very hard not to be seen. Both of those possibilities concerned me equally. We encountered our first organized survivor group on day 44. A roadblock on a county highway in southern Oregon. 3 pickup trucks parked across the road in a loose chevron. For people visible. More almost certainly behind the vehicles. Flags, handmade red and white, staked into the ground 30 feet ahead of the truck line. A signal I hadn't seen before. We stopped a quarter-mile back. Waited. One of the figures walked toward us slowly, hands up, carrying something white, a pillowcase tied to a length of dowel rod. The universal indicator. I radioed Nora in the van behind me. Told her to stay put, engine running, pointed outbound. I got out of the RV alone. Rex stayed inside. Joel stayed with the radio. Kara kept the scanner running. The man who approached was in his 50s. Work boots, quilted vest, calm eyes. He said his name was Garrett. Said the group had 31 people in a compound 2 miles off the highway. A converted cattle operation with a year's worth of feed corn converted to food use, working well water, and a perimeter fence. He said they weren't looking for trouble. He said they had a physician's assistant in the group and offered to check our supplies and health status as a trade for information about road conditions to the south. I told him the truth. I told him where we'd come from, what routes we'd used, what we'd seen. I didn't tell him where we were going, because we didn't have a fixed destination. That part seemed to genuinely surprise him. He looked at the RV, then back at the road behind me toward the van. He said, "You're moving." I said, "We're always moving." He said, "That'll work until it doesn't." I've thought about that sentence nearly every day since. He wasn't wrong. He also wasn't entirely right. But I understand what he meant now in a way I didn't then. We didn't join them. We traded information, accepted 2 gallons of fresh water and a bottle of broad-spectrum antibiotics from their PA, and gave them 50 feet of copper wire and a hand-crank radio charger from our secondary stores. Clean exchange. No leverage, no pressure from either side. We moved on before sunset. The problem with staying mobile is that mobility has a cost structure most people don't calculate until they're already inside it. Fuel consumption, tire wear, mechanical failure risk, the accelerating degradation of both vehicles under continuous use on unmaintained roads, the physical toll of driving 6 to 8 hours daily on bodies that aren't sleeping fully, aren't eating enough, aren't operating at baseline, the cognitive load of constant navigation decision-making with imperfect information and no margin for error. By day 60, the RV's check engine light had been on for 11 days. I diagnosed it as best I could using the manual and a code reader I found at an auto parts store in a small Nevada town. Oxygen sensor. Not immediately critical, but a slow drain on fuel efficiency. I needed a replacement part. That meant finding the right store, the right part number, the right installation window. It took 4 days of route-adjusted travel to find a functional auto parts warehouse far enough from any population center that we could approach and work without time pressure. Joel and I installed the sensor in 90 minutes in the parking lot. We were back on the road before dark. That became the maintenance model. Everything was a mission. Every repair, every resupply, every system check was planned like a logistics operation with primary and fallback options, observation windows, entry and exit routes pre-mapped, time limits set in advance. Nora kept the medical inventory with the same precision she applied to everything biological. She had a working knowledge of what each item in our kit could do, the shelf-stable antibiotics, the wound closure strips, the antiseptic irrigation solution, the oral rehydration salts, the blood pressure cuff she used to monitor all of us weekly. She said if she knew our baselines, she'd know when something was wrong before we felt it. On day 71, Joel's baseline reading showed elevated heart rate and lower than normal blood pressure. He said he felt fine. Nora didn't debate it. She adjusted his water intake, reduced his driving shift by half, and added a daily electrolyte packet to his ration for a week. By day 78, he was back to normal. He never showed a single symptom. Without the baseline, we wouldn't have caught it until it was a problem instead of a warning. Kara, meanwhile, had become the most sophisticated signals analyst a 14-year-old has probably ever been forced to become. She had mapped the active radio landscape across 6 states on a hand-drawn chart in her notebook. She color-coded frequencies by type: green for confirmed survivor communications, yellow for unknown origin, red for anything that sounded organized or militarized, blue for automated looped broadcasts. She annotated every entry with date, location coordinates from our road atlas, signal strength, and whether it was single-use or recurring. By day 80, she had 47 entries. By day 120, she had over 100. Most of the red entries were clustered around what used to be major highway corridors. Interstate 80, Interstate 15, Interstate 40. The organized groups, whatever their nature, were working the same roads they always had. Big infrastructure, high volume, easy navigation. We stayed off all of them. The winter hit on day 94. Not a surprise. We'd been watching the weather patterns and adjusting south. But the front moved faster than the forecasts we'd been interpolating from the last weather band broadcasts, which were already weeks out of date. We woke on the morning of day 94 to 6 inches of snow on both vehicles, and a temperature drop that our dashboard thermometer read as 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Rex was restless. Not alarmed. Just restless. Pacing the short aisle between the bunk and the door in a way that meant he needed to move and couldn't. We were parked at the edge of a rest area turnout in central Utah, elevation just under 7,000 feet. The road ahead was passable, but the grade over the next 30 miles gained another 1,000 feet before dropping back down. At 11 degrees with fresh snowpack, that stretch was a gamble. I made the call to stay 2 days. Let the temperature rise. Let traffic, if any existed, clear the grade. Use the time to run full vehicle checks and reorganize the cargo van load distribution for winter weight management. Those 2 days were the only 2 days in 6 months where none of us moved more than 30 feet from the vehicles. Nora used the time to conduct what she called a full inventory audit. She pulled every item from every storage compartment in both vehicles, cataloged it by category and condition, and rebuilt the storage layout according to access priority. The items we needed fastest were now at the front of every compartment. The items we needed rarely were at the back. It took 13 hours spread across both days. The result was that every subsequent resupply and access operation took measurably less time. Joel used the time to service both engines as thoroughly as he could with the tools we had. He'd learned mechanical basics from a summer he spent working at an uncle's repair shop at 14. He was precise and methodical about it. He changed the RV's air filter, bled the RV's brake lines, checked and topped all fluid levels in both vehicles, rotated the van's tires using the spare as part of the rotation. He found a crack in the van's serpentine belt that I hadn't noticed. We didn't have a replacement. He wrapped it in high-temperature silicone tape from the toolkit. It held for another 60 days before we found a replacement belt at a dealership service bay. On the morning of day 96, the temperature had risen to 28 degrees, and the grade road showed tracks from at least 2 vehicles that had passed in the night. Passable. We moved. By day 120, we had settled into a rhythm that felt as close to sustainable as anything I could have designed. Daily driving window, 6 to 8 hours, starting 45 minutes after full sunrise and stopping 90 minutes before full dark. Navigation, 2 waypoints minimum confirmed before departure, a fallback route identified for each leg, no detours without first consulting the atlas and the fuel gauge simultaneously. Parking protocol, always at an angle to the road with the exit direction pre-cleared. Always with at least 300 feet of visibility in the direction of primary threat exposure. Always with Rex's final approval before the engines went off. Communication between vehicles. 2 handheld radios, channel 7, brief and coded. 1 click meant stop. 2 clicks meant reverse. 3 meant emergency, all stop, weapons ready. We hadn't needed 3 clicks yet. I expected we would eventually. Food was rationed at 2 meals per day. Breakfast was always the larger meal. We'd learned early that a full stomach in the morning gave a longer useful energy window than splitting the same calories across 3 smaller portions. Nora had researched the caloric math of physical labor in field conditions years before any of this. She'd assigned caloric targets to each of us based on body weight and workload level. Joel and I, as the primary drivers and heavy labor personnel, ate more. Kara, whose work was precision and concentration rather than physical, ate slightly less but received the highest share of the nutrient-dense snack items: nuts, dried fruit, peanut butter packets, because sustained cognitive function required a different fuel profile than muscle work. Rex ate the same every day. We had 4 months of his food in sealed containers. After that, we'd have to supplement from our own stores. Nora had already calculated that transition and had identified the human food items with the appropriate protein and fat content to maintain his working condition. His working condition was non-negotiable. Water came from 3 sources depending on location: filtered stream and river water processed through our gravity filtration system, rainwater collected in collapsible catchment tarps, and sealed store stock from resupply runs. We carried a minimum of 15 gallons at all times. We never let it drop below 8. The resupply runs were Joel's and my work. Nora managed the vehicles and communications during them. Kara ran the scanner and maintained visual watch. Rex came with us on every run. His role wasn't protection, it was detection. He had never once failed to alert us to an infected presence that we hadn't already detected, and he had flagged infected presence that we had not detected on at least 12 occasions. We had a simple agreement about the runs: in and out in under 40 minutes. If we hadn't achieved the objective in 40 minutes, we left with what we had and reassessed. Every run was timed from the moment we left the vehicles. Joel watched the clock. When he said time, we moved regardless of what was still on the shelf. Day 143. A truck stop complex off a state highway in Arizona. Kara had identified it from a radio fragment she'd picked up on day 139, someone describing its fuel reserves as intact. The fragment was incomplete. She couldn't confirm a source or a date, but the location matched a truck stop I had personally visited during my logistics work years. I knew its layout exactly. 2 fuel islands. A diesel tank capacity of 20,000 gallons for commercial trucks. A separate unleaded island with its own underground tank. A detached service bay. A restaurant building. A small retail store. We observed from a distance for 90 minutes before approaching. No movement. No smoke. No vehicles at the fuel islands. The canopy lights were dark. The restaurant signage was dark. 2 cars in the parking lot. One with a flat rear tire. One with the driver's door standing open, and a coating of grit across the interior that suggested it had been open for weeks. I sent Joel to check the fuel. Hand pump, bypass key I'd acquired from a service depot on day 67, siphon hose. He had the skill set by then. Could prime a commercial pump bypass in under 4 minutes. I cleared the retail store. Rex with me on a short lead. 40 seconds in, Rex stopped. Saturday. Looked at the far end of the cleaning supply aisle. I brought the flashlight up. Nothing visible. But Rex didn't move. Didn't grow, didn't bark. Just sat. Perfectly still. That meant something was there, but wasn't actively threatening. I've learned to trust the distinction. I backed us both out of the aisle, went around the exterior, and checked the emergency exit at the end of that aisle from outside through the glass panel. 2 infected. Both down. Both still. Seated against the shelving at the far end, legs extended, heads dropped forward. Not moving because they couldn't. Both had injuries that had rendered their lower bodies non-functional. But still present. Still a risk if we got within reach. I marked the aisle as off limits, pulled what I needed from the first 3 aisles, and got us out in 31 minutes. Joel had managed to pull 60 gallons of unleaded and 8 gallons of diesel from the service bay reserve tank. We topped every container we had. Back in the vehicles, Kara asked what Rex had found. I told her. She added the location to her map with a notation in orange, a color she reserved for locations that were partially compromised but still resource viable. Day 155. We lost the RV's rear awning to a wind event. Not structurally critical, but the awning had been our primary rain and sun shelter during extended stops. Without it, our stationary comfort dropped significantly, and our solar panel deployment efficiency dropped by about 30%, because we'd been using the awning's extended arm as a mounting bracket. Joel improvised a replacement arm from 2 sections of aluminum conduit pipe found at a rural construction supply yard on day 158. It wasn't elegant. It rattled at highway speeds and had to be tied off with paracord to the roof rail to stabilize it. But it worked. Solar deployment efficiency recovered within about 10% of the original. We took the loss. That was the operational philosophy by day 155. Take the loss. Fix what you can. Move on. Don't spend 40 minutes mourning a problem that a 20-minute improvisation can partially solve. Nora was the best at this. She had a phrase she used when something broke or ran out or failed. She'd look at it, say, "What's the next version of this?" Not how do we replace it. Not how do we fix it. What's the next version? Implying that the original no longer existed as an option, and the question was already about the adaptation. Joel picked up the phrase. Eventually all 4 of us were using it. Day 174. The overpass outside of a small town in New Mexico. We were traveling east on a 2-lane state highway. I'd chosen this road because it ran parallel to the interstate, but stayed on the valley floor, avoiding 2 grades that the RV's engine had been struggling with at altitude. The overpass was a county road crossing above us, standard concrete construction, maybe 80 feet overhead. I saw the mark as we passed beneath it. Spray paint on the concrete pillar. Orange. 3 characters, a number, a dash, a letter. I noted it without stopping. Continued driving. 2 miles later I pulled over and wrote it down. Something about it had caught. Not the mark itself. Spray paint on infrastructure was common, some of it pre-outbreak tagging, some of it survivor navigation markings, some of it unknown. What caught me was the freshness of it. The color was bright. No UV fading, no road grime bleed into the edges. That paint was less than a week old. Possibly less than 48 hours old. I called Kara on the radio and described it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, day 159. The culvert outside Gallup. Same format. She opened her notebook. Read me 3 more entries. Same format. Different locations. All of them on routes we had traveled. All of them within a week of our passage through those locations. I pulled both vehicles completely off the road behind a screen of scrub brush, and we sat for 2 hours without moving, running the math. 5 marks. 5 locations. All on our routes. All fresh at the time we were in proximity. Someone was behind us. Not ahead of us, not crossing our path. Behind us. Logging our route. Marking it for something or someone. Kara checked her notebook again. Average interval between our passage and the estimated freshness of the paint. 18 to 24 hours. Whoever this was, they were traveling our route approximately 1 day behind us. Consistently. For at least 15 days. I asked her how she'd missed the connection between the earlier marks. She said she'd logged each one individually, but hadn't cross-referenced the format until now because the locations were spread across different pages. She said it in a flat voice with no self-justification. Then she said, "I'll build a cross-reference index for all location-specific visual markers going forward." She was 14 years old. I told her she hadn't missed anything, she'd caught it. She wrote the cross-reference index that night by lantern light. We changed the protocol immediately. For the next 5 days we did 3 things we had never done before. First, we added a deliberate false route. On day 175 we drove 30 miles east on a visible road, made a highly visible stop at a crossroads with clear sight lines from multiple approaches, left clear tire marks in the soft shoulder, then doubled back on a parallel track using a service road I found on the atlas. Whoever was following our route would have 30 miles of false continuation to pursue before they realized the trail had ended. Second, we started checking behind us. Joel took the binoculars and the rear-facing position at every extended stop. He watched the road we'd come from. 30-minute windows. Logged everything. On day 177, 2 days after the false route, he logged a single vehicle, a dark-colored pickup truck, at the edge of binocular range traveling our original direction, not the false route direction. Which meant either they hadn't taken the false route yet, or they had and were already correcting. Third, we went completely dark on all radio reception for 48 hours. Kara powered down the scanner entirely. No incoming signals. No frequency monitoring. We didn't want to understand their communications pattern. We wanted them to wonder whether we'd stopped communicating altogether. On day 179, Rex indicated at a rest stop we were considering for an overnight. Sat and stared west, the direction we'd come from. We moved 20 miles further east and parked in a dry wash below a ridge that blocked our thermal profile from the west. Day 180. Nothing. No marks behind us. No vehicle sightings from Joel's watch post. Kara brought the scanner back online, low gain, passive only. Nothing on any of the frequencies she'd associated with the red-coded organized entries. Day 181. The tire. The masking tape. The fourth mark still blank. That's where I am right now. It's not over. I know what a resolution feels like operationally, and this isn't it. The absence of contact for 48 hours after a confirmed surveillance pattern doesn't mean the surveillance has stopped. It means the surveillance has adapted. And something that can adapt is more dangerous than something that can only persist. Here's what I know about whoever is behind us. They have at least one vehicle and the fuel to maintain sustained travel. That means they have a resupply network or a significant reserve. They have enough route reading capability to follow our track through terrain where we've deliberately stayed off marked roads. That means either someone with real navigation skill or someone with aerial observation capability, a drone or a vantage network. They have the patience to stay one day back for at least 15 days without closing the distance. That's discipline. That's a controlled strategy, not desperation. What I don't know is what they want. If they wanted to take the vehicles or the supplies by force, the gap opportunities have been available. We've had extended stops. We've had resupply windows where we were partially exposed. They didn't take them. If they wanted to make contact, they could have approached through any of the survivor protocols we've seen work. Flags, white markers, radio hail. They haven't, which means either they're waiting for a specific condition, perhaps a moment when we're more exposed, more isolated, or more vulnerable than we've been so far, or they want to know something that only our continued travel can tell them. Where we're going, what we know, what we've found. And that second possibility is the one that keeps me writing tonight instead of sleeping. Because if they're following us to find out what we know, then the most dangerous thing about us isn't our supplies. It's Kara's notebook. I woke Nora at 0300 and told her everything I'd been thinking. She listened without interrupting. She does that, waits for the full picture before she speaks. When I finished, she sat with it for a minute. Then she said, "We need to change our trail signature." I asked her what she meant. She said, "Everything about how we move has a pattern. Stop intervals, daily mileage range, resupply target types. If someone has been following us for 15 days, they've profiled our behavior. They know our range. They know our schedule. They know roughly how far we go each day, and when we stop." She was right. Our consistency, which had been a survival asset, had become a predictability liability. We talked for 2 hours, came up with 3 changes we could implement immediately without compromising our safety fundamentals. Variable daily distance. Instead of our consistent 6 to 8 hour driving window, we'd randomize the day's mileage. Some days 3 hours, some days 10, with no predictable pattern. That would make our daily stopping point impossible to anticipate. Double back cycles. Every 4 days, we'd run a deliberate reverse leg, traveling back in the direction we came from for at least 2 hours before pivoting to a new heading. Anyone one day behind us on a forward-only tracking model would find themselves suddenly facing us if they'd closed the gap. Trail contamination. We'd start leaving the kinds of marks mobile travelers leave, partial footprints, food wrapper litter, minor fuel spills, at decoy stopping points off our actual route. Led any tracker into a false reading. None of these were foolproof. Nothing is foolproof when you don't know what you're facing. But every layer of unpredictability we added was another reason for whoever was behind us to recalculate. And every recalculation cost them time. And time, out here, is the only currency that matters. Joel heard us talking. He came forward at 0430, sat across from us in the dining booth, and looked at the atlas without being asked. He found what I'd already been considering, a convergence of secondary roads about 80 miles ahead that opened into high desert plateau country. Sparse population, complex terrain, multiple natural screening features for both travel and parking. Hard to surveil from a single following position. He pointed at it and said, "If we can get there before they recalibrate from the false route, we have room." I told him I thought so too. He nodded and went back to his bunk. Didn't ask for praise. Didn't wait for a decision confirmation. Just gave the information and returned to rest. At 0630 I checked the tire. 4th mark on the masking tape. 3 psi lower than yesterday. 7 total loss over 4 days. The leak was slow but accelerating. We had a tire plug kit in the van tool bag. I'd need to identify the puncture source before I could use it, which meant a full visual inspection in daylight. I found it at 0645, a small roofing nail. Not deep, right in the center of the tread. Best possible location for a plug repair. Joel did the repair while I held the flashlight. 11 minutes. Tire pressure confirmed stable by 0700. Nora had breakfast ready. Oatmeal with dried blueberries, peanut butter stirred in. Rex ate his kibble beside the van's rear wheel. Kara came out with her notebook, sat on the van's bumper, and updated 3 entries from yesterday's scanner logs before touching her food. At 0730 we were rolling. East first, then a curve north onto a state road that wouldn't appear on anyone's predicted extension of our last known heading. 80 miles to the plateau country. 3 hours at the pace I had planned. Nora rode with Joel in the van today. She said she wanted to give him the company. But I know her. She wanted to watch the rear. She's been doing it every day since I told her about the marks. She doesn't say anything about it. She just watches. Rex is in the passenger seat beside me. He's been watching too. His head turns toward the rear view mirror every 40 minutes or so. Routine scan. He looks, holds for a second, then looks forward again. So far, nothing. But I said that on day 173 too. We're not waiting for them to find us again. We're moving. We're changing. We're adapting everything they think they know about us. That's the only strategy that works when you don't know what you're facing. You make yourself harder to predict than you are to find. 6 months in. Roughly 11,000 miles on the RV, slightly fewer on the van. 2 oil changes. 1 serpentine belt. 1 oxygen sensor. 1 tire plug. A rear awning. 47 resupply runs. 3 close calls with infected, all managed without gunfire. 0 direct contact with the group behind us. That last number is the only one I'm working to maintain. Kara ate her oatmeal, closed her notebook, and put her headphones on to monitor the scanner. The highway ahead was empty and gray, and straight to the horizon. Somewhere behind us, someone is following the markers we used to leave. They won't find the next one,